Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective.
Morning, everyone. Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Hope that this Friday finds you well, wherever you might be. I was listening to Art Bell, and he's like, on the West Coast, on the East Coast. And Art Bell, the best host of all time, by the way. You can find him on demand, various sites. Anyway, if you don't know Supernatural, like paranormal, that kind of stuff. But anyway, he would say around the world and from here to here, because he really was around the world. He was on like 200 stations and all that. Well, we're on the internet. So we're worldwide here. We don't have anywhere near the reach that old Art Bell had. But hopefully, if we're reaching you, you're enjoying what you're seeing here on Fantasy Sports Daily. I'm Ray Flowers at FantasyGuru.com. You can find me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Wednesdays, I'm not here because I'm with Jeff Mans on the Elite Sports Show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. That show is 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Justin Fensterman and myself are on the Elite Sports Game Time Show. We're 8 to 10 Eastern Monday through Friday. We return to that time slot next week. Though, as I pointed out, as Justin's mentioned too, that's the last week of the show. So if you want to catch Justin and I, you got one more week to do that. We won't be on next Friday, but we'll be on Monday through Thursday at 8 to 10 Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio in the evening. Jeff Mann's show will continue to be on every day, 5 days a week, and I'll continue to be on with Jeff on every Wednesday. This show is, again, obviously free. We talk baseball, football, basketball, NASCAR, hockey, whatever it might be. Got a great staff, great group of people over at FantasyGuru.com. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. Get signed up with us over at FG, and let us help you on your journey to fantasy success and fun in 2025. What are we talking about today? Well, here we go. This is what we're talking about. Really interesting scenario that I read an article about, and I hadn't honestly thought about it yet, but Ken Rosenthal wrote something about Major League Baseball, the playoffs, and the Tampa Bay Rays. What's going to happen if the Rays make the playoffs? Why does that matter? They play in a stadium that holds less than 11,000 people. We'll talk about that here in a bit. We'll also talk about Shane Baz of the Rays. Not been a great season, hasn't lived up to my personal expectations, but yesterday was a banger of an effort. Does it signify some good things coming ahead? Shohei Ohtani, we got some update here on him on the pitching side of things. Griffin, Canning, hurt. Manaea, Shota and Imanaga really strong in his return yesterday. We'll talk about that. Clayton, Kershaw, Spencer Torkelson, Mookie Betts, Bryce Harper, Royce Lewis. Is he still a thing? Someone asked me a question in Discord over at FG, and we're just assuming that we're going to keep Lewis. And okay, but is that is that where we're at right now? Is Royce Lewis the guy that you're holding on to if you've got to make roster decisions right now? We'll also talk about Mark Vientos and the roster decisions that the Mets will have to make in about 25 minutes. Since it is a Friday, we'll talk to Russel J. Clay, and we'll talk the tight end market with him. And we're basically going to focus on tight end twos, or guys that could be tight end, guys in that 10 and above range according to ADP. So these are not the Travis Kelce's and the Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkins of the world. We're going to go down a little bit, which I think is good to know who these players are. And it's also good for those of you that are in tight end premium leagues where these guys get scooped up. So we'll talk to Russell about that here in a bit. You can listen to the show live in a variety of places. First off, youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork, facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ, and Twitter X @FantasyGuruSite. If you go to any of those three places, you can watch the show. Yeah, you can listen and watch live. You can leave comments and questions in the chat room. Here we go. Trevor Rogers to the moon. Makes a big difference, John, when Trevor Rogers throwing 94 miles an hour instead of 89. The extra velocity really helps. He's talked about a mechanical change he's made. He's rediscovered his old velocity. Has looked pretty good for the Orioles. We'll talk more about him moving forward. By the way, the rankings will be updated. That's a good note I should make to myself to make sure I vet Trevor Rogers. The rankings come out next week on Tuesday. We'll have the updated rankings over at FantasyGuru.com. The rankings have been fixed. The rankings page is finally working. So if you're wondering about that, it is working. We're good to go. And we'll have the rankings posted on July 1st for the update. So there you go. All those places that I just mentioned, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter X, you can watch the show live or on demand, of course. It's always cataloged there. You can also see the show live or listen to the show on demand, If you type Fantasy Sports Daily into wherever you listen to podcasts, it should pop up. Click that subscribe tab on that and just have those podcasts directly sent to your phone or iPad or iPod. Or you used to use iPods? Maybe not. I still have an iPod that has things stored on it, but it's so old it no longer updates. So it's not, I can't even go on the internet with it anymore, but it still has music on it. So I still have that. But yeah, you can listen to us at fantasyguru.com also by clicking the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. All right, let's get into it here. Ken Rosenthal. You know Ken Rosenthal. I was shocked the first time I saw him in person. I was at the winter meetings in is it Tennessee? The tab's behind me. I can't look. I think it was Tennessee 5 years ago or something like that. And if Ken Rosenthal is 5'5", I'm shocked. He's probably like 5'3". He's really small. He was actually doing an interview on a box. It was pretty funny. I'm a 6'4" guy, so that's a significant difference to me. But anyway, great reporter, super tight end, and he wrote a great article the other day that I hadn't honestly thought about. So let's go through what might actually play out here in the world of baseball. The Rays are in the playoff hunt, and in fact, they're like right at the top of the wild card rankings, right? So there's a legitimate chance that they're going to make the playoffs. And again, who knows? And it's a long season. But let's assume, for the sake of this discussion, what Ken did in his article, that they do make the playoffs. Well, what are we going to do here? Well, what do you mean, what are we going to do here, Ray? If the Rays have a home game or multiple home games in the playoffs, can they play where they're at? Their stadium right now, George Steinbrenner Field, holds 10,000 plus people. That's it. It's a minor league stadium they're playing in. Obviously, there was the weather situation that ruined their home ballpark, and so they're playing this season at the minor league park. It's less than 11,000 people. Note that for the World Series, if they were to make it that far, and the odds of them are low, of course, making it that far, but let's just play this out. Let's say the Rays do make the World Series. Generally speaking, Major League Baseball, according to Ken Rosenthal, has about 7,500 tickets a game that are given to players and their families, umpires and their families, visiting team gets a chunk of tickets to make sure there's some people there, sponsors, broadcast partners, media, et cetera, et cetera. So 7,500 seats are given away for World Series games. The stadium holds less than 11,000 people. Yeah, that's a problem, right? Second problem, and a really significant problem, is that the players get paid for the postseason. The salaries they make are for the regular season. In terms of the postseason, there's a player pool that gets money divvied up and given to all the players after the fact. So they make $200,000, $150,000. They make extra money for playing in the playoff. 60% of the gate receipts go to the players. If they're selling 11,000 seats versus 45,000 seats, they only get 25% of the gate. Or 25% of the normal gate, and they only get 60% of that. It's nothing. Would the players be okay with that? So what's the real solution? Playing in a neutral site is the real solution from a financial perspective. Is that fair to the Rays to not be in the home ballpark? Is that fair to their fans to not be in their home ballpark? If the neutral site is New Orleans, I'm making it up. What if you're a fan of the Rays? You can't travel to New Orleans to watch the games. You certainly can't travel there to watch an entire series, right? You can't be flying back. So this is a real problem. And it's something I just thought was really interesting. Thought I'd bring it up here on the show. It's a real problem that hopefully Major League Baseball won't have to address. But the Athletics, they're playing in a park. I think their stadium holds, it's definitely less than 15,000. I'm trying to remember what, 14,000. These environments are nice for baseball. They're very intimate and all that, but they're not good for playoffs. Something to think about as we get closer to, we're at the midway point, so we start thinking about the playoffs here moving forward. Talk a little bit about the players before we visit with Russell Clayton about 20 minutes. We'll talk to football with Russell Clayton about 20. Shane Baz had 9 strikeouts, 8 scoreless innings yesterday. Boom. There we go. That's what I'm talking about, Shane Baz. 70% strikeout rate. That's what I'm talking about, Shane Baz. That was a really good effort. And it's a reminder of how efficient Shane Baz can be. Is he a superstar? No. Was he in the Breakout Pitcher of the Year article? Yes. Have I been disappointed to date with what he has done? Absolutely. Absolutely disappointed. But remember, there have been moments here with Shane Baz. We saw it, at the start of the season, he got obliterated. His second outing was a 7-inning shutout effort. Then he got blitzed for 13 runs in a couple of games. Then he had a couple of wonky efforts here. But if you look at his last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, his last 7 starts, Shane Baz, 3.24 ERA, take that. A 1.1 whip, absolutely take that. 8.2 strikeouts per 9, we'll take that. So for the last month and a half, highlighted by that 8-inning shutout effort yesterday, Shane Baz has been legit. He also has 6 strikeouts in each of his last 3 games. And this is just a reminder to folks, and again, It's a long season. It seemed like we've been playing forever. We're just hitting the midway point. There's still a long way to go for Shane Baz and the Rays and everybody else. And while Shane Baz right now isn't great, you know what Shane Baz's record is? And I know wins, I don't know wins. I will say that wins shouldn't be, and I know they are, shouldn't be used in the fantasy space. That's fine. But you know how many wins Shane Baz has? Don't look. How many wins does he have? Just think to yourself. How many wins? Shane Baz is third in baseball in victories. Third. He has 8 victories. And that matters in 5x5 leagues. Whether we like it or not, it matters. He has more victories than Zack Wheeler. He has more victories than Logan Webb. He has more victories than Brian Wu or Yoshi Yamamoto. He's 8-3. So, the record's been there. The strikeouts have basically been there, 86 and 90 innings. That's basically what we expected. A little low, but basically what we expected. And like I said, for the last month and a half, Shane Baz, maybe he'll end up getting to where we expected him to be at the start of the season. He's been that guy here for the last month and a half. Shohei Ohtani's going to make his next start tomorrow against the Royals. This one is really difficult. I know there are people struggling with this decision here. Ohtani is an opener right now because they're letting him pitch and work up his pitch count, which is fine because it's baseball in 2025. If you have two Ohtanis, you have the hitter Ohtani and the pitcher Ohtani, and this question has come up, do you even roster the Ohtani pitcher? I mean, we're looking at 2 innings of work and 2 starts. Like, okay, so he pitches tomorrow against the Royals and they give him 2 innings. And then the next time out, they give him 3 innings. And the next time out, they give him 4 innings. Like, it's not until after the All-Star break that he's throwing 5 innings, which obviously you need to qualify for a victory. So whether you hold Ohtani the pitcher at this point depends on your league size, your style of play, like head-to-head. It's really difficult. Ben Casperis is going to come in, or most likely to come in after Ohtani tomorrow, and he's pitched very effectively. So he's interesting because, again, these bulk relievers can throw 4 innings to get a victory, right? You don't have to go 5 innings. But just keep an eye on that. I guess, Justin Warbelski or Ben Casperis. Maybe both. We'll see. Maybe Warbelski will just pitch on Sunday and Casperis will be the backup. I hopefully get some clarity on that. But I'm going with Ohtani opening, Casperis being the bulk guy behind him, and Warbelski starting on Sunday. That's what we think right now, at least. Bad news with Griffin Canning. We just wrote about him yesterday. I did an article for those of you that missed it over at FG, an article talking about the stuff plus numbers, location plus, pitching plus. Check that out. It's a really interesting article, hopefully. And one of the guys that came up there in the article and he was discussed was Griffin Canning. Griffin Canning went out last night, and he's got an Achilles injury. And that was confirmed after the game. It's what it looked like at the time. It was confirmed after the game. There's MRI being run. Obviously, the concern is extremely elevated that his season is over. It's very rare. I mean, if you injure your Achilles, it's usually bad. Like, there's not too many times there's a mild Achilles issue. Usually is something snaps and there have to be surgery and all this kind of stuff. And the fact is that the injury itself is a dangerous one. Michael Soroka injured his Achilles, actually did twice. And it's taken him like 5 years, three or 4 years to get back to where he was. It takes a long time. Some athletes never get back. So let's hope for the best for Griffin Canning. Maybe the reports will come out today and it'll be good news. But it's looking very much like he is done for the season. Hopefully we're wrong. Now, on a positive-ish news, Manaea, who was supposed to already be back by now, they found a loose body in his elbow. He'd been coming back from the oblique. He could just about ready to come back from the oblique, and then they found something in his elbow. And I think he got a shot, right? Or they shut him down. I'm forgetting. It's all running together at this point. But the bottom line is they slowed down his recovery a little bit. He played catch yesterday, which is obviously good news. So barring something crazy here in the next 24 hours, he's about ready to go on his rehab assignment. It just basically backed this up about a week. It appears that he's going to be ready right around the All-Star break, which is good news for the Mets because obviously they're without Senga, they're without Griffin. There's holes in the rotation they have to plug. Manaea is supposed to be a guy making 30 starts for them at the top of the rotation. He was fantastic last year. Is he going to be that guy? And that's the big question a lot of people have had with pitchers coming back from injuries. We'll talk about one of them here in a second, in Shota and Imanaga. When pitchers miss any period of time, there's always some concern. When they miss a month, 2 months, 3 months, you just don't know. And I know a lot of people were banking on like Ohtani to be the guy. They're banking on Manaea to rescue their season, these kind of things. And while that is possible, it also has to be noted that when you miss months and months and months, it's a long time. Where are you at physically? Where are you at mentally? I think a lot of people played sports and they didn't play it at a high level, or they played sports and they never hurt, so they don't understand how difficult it is to have an injury that knocks you out for half a season and then you just have to pick up and go. It's really difficult. So hopefully in the case of Manaea, he can be who he was drafted to be. He can be who the Mets saw last season. They're going to need it here down the stretch. Speaking of Imanaga, what a nice outing. He went out there yesterday, 5 innings, gave up 1 hit against the Cardinals in his return from the injured list. Only 2 balls were hard hit balls, so 95 miles an hour, so there was not a lot of hard contact against him. Out with that hamstring injury, obviously the arm wasn't an issue, but the leg was. Imanaga, thumbs up. And whether you started him or not yesterday, again, my lean yesterday was no. If you ignored me, you made the right choice. He was really effective yesterday, and he should be considered that guy moving forward. He faces the Guardians next, so that's not a matchup that you have to fear. Because the one real issue with Imanaga on a grand scheme is the home run ball, the big fly. And the Guardians aren't the most powerful team in the league, right? I know Kyle Manzardo hits home runs when he's not making 3 errors in the field. Did you see that? Kyle Manzardo made 3 errors in the field the other night, all in 1 inning. So Imanaga should be good to go moving forward. Great to see him look really good yesterday. Not just the results, he looked good as well. Clayton Kershaw got the results and looked good too. And this is starting to get interesting with Clayton Kershaw. He's the guy who's dropped. And Clayton Kershaw is really pretty amazing. That's why he's going to the Hall of Fame. But he's nowhere near the pitcher he used to be. His stuff is diminished at a substantial level from where it was 5 years ago. Substantially down. Velocity is down. Spin rates are down. Like, he's not the pitcher he once was. And he still gets out. His ERA is now down to 3.03, and his WHIP is 1.19. There's a lot of guys mid-career. There's all-stars that don't post numbers like that on a consistent basis. And here's Clayton Kershaw, kind of cranky, creaky. Maybe it's 5 innings, and it's not getting it done. Now, he's only got 29 strikeouts in 38 innings, which is not good, obviously. We want the league average about 8.5 strikeouts per 9. That's a 6.5 mark per 9. It's not good. He's a streaming option. But guess what? Excuse me. He faces the White Sox next. We're streaming him in that option. So if Clayton Kershaw's on the waiver wire, pick him up. He dominated the Rockies as he should have. He probably will dominate the White Sox as he should. Then we can make a decision based upon how the schedule plays out with him. But more good than not with Kershaw. The lack of strikeouts and a very moderate, for him, strikeout to walk ratio obviously is a concern if we're looking at just rolling him out there as a starter the rest of the season. Angela says he's holding on to Manaea and Bieber. Bieber also had a setback, but they say now positive things here, so I guess we're going to see him in the second half. We'll see. You know, coming back from an oblique injury is also different than coming back from Tommy John surgery. We know that when you have elbow surgery, oftentimes the last thing to come back is control. Bieber's game is really about control, so if he doesn't have his control, where's he going to be? How much velocity is he going to regain? Because he definitely was losing velocity prior to the surgery. We'll see with both those guys in the second half. Speaking of hitters, Spencer Torkelson, who was fantastic in spring, who was fantastic to start the season, he's kind of gone, And he hit a home run yesterday, and that's really good news because Torkelson, as good as he has been, we're kind of back to where we were in the preseason, where the Tigers aren't necessarily playing him every day. And that to me is, again, I don't really get it. Halfway through this season, he's on pace to go 35-100. You don't want to play that guy every day. Now, again, he's been slow of late. He's hitting 190 the last month. So I'm not going to sit here and say he hasn't slowed down, because he absolutely has. Still has 4 home runs and 10 RBIs in 21 games, right? Which is still a 30-80 pace. Like, it's still pretty good. But yeah, when this team is healthy, as we've talked about a lot, we haven't been recently, but we talked about a lot in the months of April and May. When this team is healthy, playing time gets a little tight. So we'll continue to monitor Torkelson. Nice to see him go deep last night. He is in a bit of a funk. He's only had 79 at-bats the last month. He's only played 9 games the last 2 weeks. So there are some starts he's starting to miss. That's something to keep an eye on, because his game is such that he needs to play every day. He's a compiler. He's not going to hit 300. He's not stealing bases, so he needs to be in there every day for those home runs and RBIs. Mookie Betts. Let's talk about him for a moment. Again, about 10 minutes away from Russell Clay and some football talk. Mookie Betts went 2 for 4 yesterday. Just wanted to check in with Mookie Betts because I don't remember the last time I got a question about Betts, and we shouldn't have questions about Betts because he's always in your lineup. Kind of surprised no one's asked a trade question about Mookie Betts. He's only played shortstop this year, so it's starting to look like, though who knows, it's starting to look like he's only going to be shortstop eligible next season. So that's something to think about. It maybe dings him a little bit. He'll be 33 next year. Maybe that dings him a little bit in your eyes. He's still been very productive. He's on a 150-game pace per 100 runs scored, which batting at the top of the order, what does he normally hit, second? Should be scoring 100 runs. He's also on pace for 18 home runs and 12 steals. Disappointing. You want a little bit more for him. You're hoping to get 25 home runs, and 15 steals is fine, but hoping to get 25 home runs. Only on pace for about 80 RBIs. He had 75 last year, so again, the real issue that he's had to date has been his batting average, which is kind of surprising. He's still maintaining a 1-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, but his batting average is down at 256. His batting average of balls in play is at 260, which is a very low mark for him. He's never had a mark that low previously. His career mark is over 300, so probably some regression coming there, but exit velocity is down, barrel rate is down, hard hit rate is down. He might, his performance to date says he's a 270 hitter, not 250, 270, but we're used to him hitting 290 plus. I'm hopeful that the second half will change that he'll get healthy. He's been dealing with things physically most of the season. Get healthy and really have a big second half. Maybe he'll have that stretch like we're seeing Max Muncy have right now with the Dodgers or Andy Pages has had. But he'll continue to bat at that top third of the order with Ohtani and Freeman. All he needs to do is stay in the lineup, stay productive. Let's hope he becomes a little bit more Mookie Betts-like down the stretch. Bryce Harper took 75 swings off a pitching machine yesterday. He's scheduled to hit on the field today. So there's a chance he's back next week because it doesn't sound like the Phillies are really planning on him going out on an injured list, rehab assignment, if you will, sorry. He's dealing with the right wrist issue. It sounds like they're just going to let him do some things around the team and then activate him next week. So he's been out since June 6th, so it's been about 3 weeks here with the wrist injury. The hope is that he'll be back on the field, and I guess it's possible that he's activated this weekend. I guess that's possible. I would be looking more toward next week with Bryce Harper. Royce Lewis, talked about him earlier. Royce Lewis out since June 13th with the strained hamstring, is supposed to begin his rehab assignment at AAA starting tonight. He's going to DH tonight, and then we'll see how it goes. Royce Lewis could be back with the Minnesota Twins next week. Obviously, he is at that point now. If you haven't gotten to this point yet, you're not paying attention. Royce Lewis can't be trusted. Royce Lewis is more of a risk to play, I think, than Byron Buxton, which is a shock. Because the Twins should have, in Byron Buxton, one of the best overall players in baseball. They should have Byron Buxton and Royce Lewis going 2020 while playing third base as the centerpieces of their offense. They can't get these two guys even on the field at the same time. In the case of Royce Lewis, he no longer runs. That part of his game is gone, I think, largely because of injury. He stopped running because he's always hurting his legs, and the team has probably also said don't run. He didn't attempt to steal last year. He hasn't attempted a steal this year. That's 112 games with no steals and no attempted steals from a guy that everyone thought would be a 20 steal guy at the big league level. It's really disappointing how that's developed. Be that as it may, let's talk about the bat. The question came up in the Discord, and I said, I've got a couple guys coming off the injured list. I have to drop a couple of these players. One of the players coming off the injured list was Royce Lewis. And I said, are we sure we're just keeping Royce Lewis, or should Royce Lewis be considered as the drop? Royce Lewis has hit, to be frank, like ass this year. He's got a 585 OPS. He's hitting 202. He's greatly decreased his strikeout rate. Now, it's limited work. It's only 110 plate appearances. But I love the fact his 23% league average strikeout rate's down to 15%. I love that. He's also increased his walk rate. Love that. So that's a nice basis. But the fact of the matter is he hasn't had any results. Now, on the positive side, his exit velocity is way up. It's actually a career best number. His barrel rate's actually a career best number. And his hard hit rate, actually a career best number. So while he's hitting 202, his expected batting average is in the 260s. That's not bad. We can live with the 260 average for him if he's driving the baseball. His 303 slugging percentage has an expected slug of 464. We can live with that. Nice if it was a little higher, but we can live with that. He's got a launch angle of about 18%, which is right on his career number. He's got a home run to fly ball ratio of 5%. His career average is 15%. As we discuss all the time, 3 years of home run to fly ball ratio is a very good indicator of your fours number. He had a 15% home run to fly ball ratio, and it's 5% right now. Very likely that number goes up as this game's play go up if they do. The one real negative here is he's not pulling the baseball. He doesn't have to pull the baseball to hit a home run, and it's not a bad thing to use the whole field, obviously. But coming into his career number is about 45% pull rate coming into this season. It's 35% right now. This is probably largely a function of health. So at the end of the day, would I drop Royce Lewis? No, I'd try to hold him. But the real issue here is if he can get and stay healthy. That's the whole game, right? Because if he does, the data is, remember, less strikeouts, more walks, hitting the baseball harder. Like the pieces are here for him to have a really impressive second half, minus the speed piece because that's not his game anymore. Can he do that? Well, we're about ready to find out. So I ultimately didn't tell the fella, gal, lady, person in Discord to drop Royce Lewis because I don't think that was the right call. But I thought it was worth going through who Royce Lewis is and could be. The could be part is still intriguing. The is part, not so much. Mark Vientos said yesterday that his injured hamstring is doing better and he's going to be activated today. The assumption is that happens, that Ronnie Mauricio will probably be sent down to the minors for the return of Mark Vientos. Now, we get into the issue of, can a player be sent down and options and all that kind of stuff. And the fact is that Mark Vientos has no options left, so he can't be sent down. So the only way the Mets don't activate him, because he struggled this year, right? So they could theoretically do something. They'd have to expose him to waivers just like the Reds did with Heimer Candelario. And obviously, I would be stunned if the Mets did that. So Vientos goes back onto the big league roster. And then it's a matter of looking at this big league roster, and Ronnie Mauricio is probably the guy that goes. Mauricio's been effective, but Beatty, I think, has done enough to maintain his spot on the big league roster. Both Mauricio and Beatty have options left, so they could be demoted without an issue. But I think that Mauricio is the guy to go. The real question is, does Vientos return to an everyday role? What's going on with Vientos? Well, his 200 plate appearances this year look nothing like the guy we saw last year. Nothing like the guy we saw last year. And the biggest change is he's lost 100 points in his isolated power mark from an impressive 250 level last year to a below league average 150 level this year. He has not been the 30 home run guy that he was anticipated to be. His batted ball data is all down from, unlike Lewis, it's all down from last year. Not catastrophically, but down across the board to the point where his expected slugging and his expected batting average are almost identical to his actual raw numbers. So there's not a lot of hidden stuff in here, according to StatCast. He's lifted the ball. I'm looking at the numbers here. He's lifted the ball 1% different than last year, so there's really been no change there. His home run to fly ball ratio that was 27% last year is down to 12% this year. 27% is a very high number, very hard to sustain. Not surprising it's pulled back. Seeing it less than half of last year, well, now he's dropped to the league average or slightly below the league average mark. That's a little bit of a number that should rise. Another player like Lewis, who's not pulling the ball as much, 42% pull rate last year, 31% this year. Vientos has got the chance to play most days and to hit 14, 15 home runs in the second half. But he's got to get going. And if he doesn't get going, the Mets might have to do something, make a trade, something like that. I wasn't overly bullish on Vientos coming into the year. I'm not bullish on him right now. I don't think the Mets or you should give up on him, though. So you might want to check the waiver wire and see if he's floating around on that. So there's our baseball talk for the day. For more baseball talk, go to fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. Get signed up for the baseball product. It's all one package now. DFS, wagering, and seasonal. All of it's one package. You get signed up, send a note to support@fantasyguru.com. You get signed up for the package, and you're taken care of. Everything we do for baseball, you get it all. Discord rooms, the articles, everything, the advice. So sign up over at fantasyguru.com. All right, it's football time. And when it's football time on Fridays, you know what we're doing. We're talking to our main man, Russell J. Clay, Russ Clay, Russell Clay, Russell J, Russ J. There's a lot of things going on here with this name. But what you need to know is this guy's game is legit. So let's bring in Russell Clay of fantasyguru.com. How you doing today, Russ?
What's going on, Ray?
I like the fact that you're Russ Clay, Russell J. Clay, because I'm the third. So, I played, I used to, as a kid, for those people that don't know, Ray's my middle name. And I would so the first day of school when you're a kid and the teacher goes, Stanley, Ray, Flowers the third, and all the kids in third grade laugh because it's like a stupid name and Stanley, and I have to raise my hand and say, no, I go by Ray, and the teacher's all confused that, So did you ever deal with that, with the teachers not using the J or calling you by your middle name or calling you Russ or asking you if it was Russ or Russell or no?
It was always Russ or Russell.
Okay.
What are we doing here? And my answer's been the same for my entire life, which is, I don't know. You figure it out. That's a choose your own adventure type situation. So I'd say it's a 70-30 split. Most people call me Russ, but there's a few Russells out there. So, it is what it is. I
think like the first 3 years we worked together, I called you Russell. Now I'm trying to do a little bit of Russ because it feels like now we're homies. So I always loved it when Russ, they would call me on the phone, right? There's people that don't know you, they're trying to sell you something or whatever, right? Can I speak to Stanley? Hang up because you don't know me.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, no. And then I loved it when they say, can I speak to Stan? Like they're trying to act like we're homies. Like, I'm not Stanley, I'm Stan. Can I speak to Stan? I go, my grandfather's dead. Hang up. It was always a way for me kind of to weed out people that didn't know me because at no point in my life did I ever go by Stan.
Right. Yeah. I feel like I could pull off being a Joseph, but we'll see.
Did you ever get RJ?
Never got RJ. Got Rusty a few times, and I extinguished that one quickly. My first bus driver was named Rusty.
Okay.
And I just couldn't do the Rusty thing. But yeah.
Understandable. All right. Well, there you go. Now you know everything about our backgrounds.
Yeah.
Russ and Ray or Joseph. Is it Joseph? Sorry, I already just forgot. It's Joseph, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Joseph and Stanley. I'm mixing and matching first and middle names. You get the point, folks. Thanks for joining us. And with Russell Clay every Friday. Comes on about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Thought we'd talk some tight ends today. And, some people are in dynasty leagues, so they care about depth tight ends. Other people are in tight end premium leagues. They care about depth tight ends. So basically want to have a discussion with you with kind of any guys outside the top 10 in ADP at the tight end spot. So basically tight end twos. And whether or not these are guys that are drafted on day one or not, they're players that will be picked up for injuries, bye weeks. They'll have a big spike week and people will jump in on them. So I wanted to talk about them a little bit here, Russ. And I want to start out first of all with Mason Taylor, who is obviously part of the Jets now. And there's some excitement there in terms of his skill set and opportunity with the team. We're hearing from his head coach, Aaron Glenn, some positivity about blocking, which is always nice to hear. A young tight end having his coach say he's good at blocking. So give us your thoughts on Mason Taylor. Let's try to keep the talk mostly about 2025, right? More of a redraft scenario. Who is Mason Taylor this season? And is he one of those rare tight ends that as a rookie might actually have fantasy value?
Well, Ray, my first thought when I saw Mason Taylor was that guy looks familiar.
Okay.
And then I looked up and it's Jason Taylor's son. And I'm like, damn, I'm getting old. So that was my first thought. But yeah, second round pick on a Jets team that really hasn't had a tight end over the last couple of years. I mean, they have Tyler Conklin, who's, a solid vet. But, when we look at this 2025 depth chart, it does look like they're trying to shift into a new era. They have Justin Fields there. And, this is wide open in terms of opportunity for Taylor, especially if he can catch. They have Garrett Wilson. They have Malachi Corley, but that's kind of it in terms of, big-time receiving weapons. I know they have Alan Lazard as well, but if we're looking for young upside plays in this offense, Taylor might be one of them. But like you said, 2025, really hard to get too high on a tight end unless it's a Brock Bowers. But yeah, good to hear in training camp he's doing well.
So we go from super young to super old. Zach Ertz. Obviously, the Commanders exceeded expectations last year. There's all kinds of excitement about where their offense is this year. They added another weapon in Deebo Samuel, growth of Jay Daniels, all this kind of stuff. Zach Ertz is not sexy or exciting, but as we saw last year, surprisingly, still can catch 4 or 5 passes a week and fall down, right? Are we going to see more of that? Is he going to be a 10-point a week kind of guy in a PPR setup that we could roll with? Are you concerned overly? Are you staying away from because there is no upside? Talk us through that situation with the Commanders tight end.
So in the same line as the Mason Taylor situation, Ben Sinnott was drafted in the top 3 rounds last year by Washington, and they had Zach Ertz come in and basically take his job last year. So Ertz still there. I'm rooting for Sano to kind of take the reins there, but I would doubt that. I do think Ertz is going to be there another year. He was really valuable for them, not only in the regular season, but in the playoffs. And when you look at it all, he had over 80 catches last year. So, yeah, it's the I used to call it the Austin Hooper, or the Jason Witten, but yeah, Zach Ertz fully in the Jason Witten catch and fall over, and it works pretty well for him. So he can definitely do that again this year. 70 catches. Mm-hmm. So yeah, not bad.
Russ Clay of fantasyguru.com joins us every Friday at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. We got the Austin Hooper drop. So let's talk about his teammate, Hunter Henry. Obviously, you're a big fan of Drake May and where he could end up. You look at this offense, there's excitement about Trevion Henderson in the backfield. They did bring in Stephon Diggs, but clearly this is a team that's a little bit light on weapons that they can depend upon. Hunter Henry was disappointing last season because I think we all thought he'd be a little bit better, but I don't know how many people realize he actually set a career high in catches and yards. This wasn't a terrible season. He's got a big contract. Where does he fit in the tight end 2 matrix?
I'm looking at his Pro Football Reference page right now. What a strange career. He's been pretty solid for about a decade now, other than that year he missed. He's really between 500 and 600 yards every year. Mm-hmm. And I guess shame on us for thinking we would get more last year. I sort of was in that camp. Right. And yeah, so I guess we can kind of plug in 600 yards. He was very valuable for May when May was first starting and developing in this offense. I expect that to be a factor again, but yeah, we know what Hunter Henry is at this point in his career, 60 catches, 600 yards. And if we don't expect more than that, we could probably look forward to a pretty good season.
When we shift things over to Tampa Bay, obviously changes on the coaching staff, all the excitement about Ibuka has been added. They still have got Godwin. They still have Evans. They got a bunch of guys to catch passes. There's Cade Otton. And a lot of people looked at Cade Otton and he was constantly in stardom syndrome questions last year. And a lot of people drafted him expecting really big things. And from week 7 to 9, he was a star. I mean, he had 18 PPR points, 29 PPR points, 22 PPR points. He was an absolute star for 3 weeks. The rest of the time, he was scoring 8 points. I mean, it's just he looks like one of those tight ends. Anything different this year with him? Change the coaching scheme, or you're worried about the age of Evans, you're worried about the age and health of Godwin. Maybe we see more work. Any path to Cade Otton being more than he was last year?
I am chasing my tail so bad with the Tampa Bay tight ends. So initially, they drafted a guy named Payne Durham. And I was like, oh, this guy's going to take Cade Otton's spot. He's pretty good out of Purdue, good receiver. And they just iced him for 2 years. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm wrong on Otton. Started moving Otton up in the rankings and be like, all right, Otton's our guy. And then by the end of last year, those last 3 games, and I'm looking at it now, Payne Durham started to get on the field. He had a 7-target game. He had 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games. And I'm like, okay, are we doing this now? Like, what are we doing with this? I think the reality is Tampa Bay doesn't really have a featured tight end. If you are an Otton person, I would take that final couple games seriously. Not that he's going to overcome Otton, but maybe they make this a split snaps thing. They also have Ibuka and all the guys you mentioned, which kind of clogs everything up. So it's going to be a super high volume offense. We like that. But yeah, it's a weird, I I'm having a tough time with Tampa Bay tight ends.
We're going to have a tough time. We're not going to have a tough time here with Mike Gesicki, right? We know we're just out. Now, as a guy who had Mike Gesicki for years in his dynasty team, there have been a couple of decent seasons. He caught 65 passes last year for 665 yards.
Yeah.
That's the second best year of his career, and those numbers are right there with Zach Ertz. Like everyone talks about Zach Ertz, and Gesicki actually had almost identical numbers. Is the usability or the feasibility of Gesicki, because we saw this last year, really tied to T. Higgins and when he's on the field? Is like if Higgins is out of there, Gesicki might get 7 targets. If he's in there, he's going to get 3 or 4. Is that same thing again, rolling it back this year in 2025?
I would say them bringing him back is a really positive indicator. I thought he made a positive impact for them and was a very good addition for that offense. And they noticed that. They brought him back.
They had him too, like you said.
They had some other decent tight ends, and he overcame all them, had some big games towards the end of the last year. Like you mentioned, though, as long as Chase and Higgins are healthy, it's tough to scale that on a week-to-week basis. So he'll be inconsistent, but for best balls, I'm definitely drafting him again.
I've gotten a lot of questions, and there always seems to be excitement about Jake Ferguson. And while I get it, I don't really get it. He hasn't scored a touchdown like in 400 games. He's not a yak guy. He's got a role in his offense, and he's going to be utilized, but I have a hard time figuring out how a guy that's not a huge red zone threat, who's not a big yak guy, who's not you talked about Schoonmaker a lot too when we've had these discussions over the years with Ferguson. Ferguson's about the highest guy that we're going to talk about on this list today. I think Tucker Kraft's the only guy ahead of him in ADP. So there's still people that are in. Some people are drafting Ferguson to be their tight end 1 this year. Your thoughts on that call?
Yeah, you mentioned it. 0 touchdowns on 86 targets last year. That's, probably more of a indication of that offense, but it could also be that they brought him back and they were like, hey, we just drafted this Schoonmaker guy in the 2nd round of the draft. We better get him some snaps. So overall, I like the Dallas offense. Pickens and Lamb is a great combo, and I do like the tight end combination. And I think they hit on that draft pick with Ferguson. 50, 60 catches, probably what we're going to be looking at again here. But it seems like a low ceiling play, which that can work, right? In best ball, we get that 10 points a week. That's not bad. So that's what we're playing for Ferguson, though.
The guy, again, that's only one I think, according to AP, ahead of Ferguson is Tucker Kraft. And it's interesting, 12 months ago, was it Kraft or Musgrave? Now everyone's like, oh, it's got to be Kraft. And it's like, okay, it's got to be Kraft. This team is frustrating from a fantasy perspective, the Packers, because as we're well aware, they spread the ball around, right? 1 week it's this guy, 1 week it's that guy. There's 4 or 5 different wide receivers that had big weeks last year. You got Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft didn't quite to the Mike Gesicki level, didn't quite perform to that level. But let's also remember, in a 5-game stretch, he scored 5 touchdowns from weeks 4 to 8. Like, he was pretty heavily involved at the start, and then down the stretch, Where are you at with Tucker Kraft? Is he worthy of taking as a tight end 1? Is he a gamble you would take?
You're exactly right about the conversation with Kraft and Musgrave and how it's completely flipped. What's up, Kyle? Good to see you, brother. I'll tell you what, every Packers fan I talk to or someone who likes the NFC North, they're big Tucker Kraft guys now. They love their guy. They're like all in. And, every time I do a live on TikTok or even in the chat and in Fantasy Guru, it's like, Tucker Kraft. I'm like, okay, like I'll move him up a little bit. I have no problems with him. He had a really good 2024 season. Musgrave came back towards the end of last year, so that changed things a bit. But I would agree. I do think it's Kraft. I've moved him up. I think he's in the high 70s in the dynasty ratings. But as far as this season, we can take shots on him, and that is a high ceiling play.
You think, I mean, in order for him to be a high ceiling play, is it he's going to catch 80 passes? Is he going to score 10 touchdowns? Like what would be his path to getting there?
Well, they don't really have a slot guy right now. I want it to be Jaden Reed, but they're more using him like a gadget guy last year. So we need a guy for Jordan Love to dump it off to and not throw into triple coverage. So that's my hope for them this year.
Russell Clay of FantasyGuru.com. I think everyone listening at one point in time, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but at one point in time, everyone listening has called out the name of JJ. Someone's gone Juwan Johnson for some week at some point, right? It's just he's kind of the quintessential streaming guy. I don't know what's quite going on with the Saints. I don't think anyone quite knows how things are going to play out. We've got the returning Shohei from injury. We've got the constant health concerns with Chris Olave. Tyler Shough looks like he's going to be the quarterback. So things are in turmoil. You got Taysom Hill coming back from injury at some point here. Juwan Johnson looks like, and let's be honest about this too, he is their tight end. Okay. Taysom Hill might be the tight end in fantasy, but their tight end is Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson this year, any different than the last couple of years? Is that just what he's at?
The Saints offense, I just want them to start over. It's an abstract painting that I just want to be done. They're going with the Tyler Shough, Spencer Rattler thing. I'm not sure how that's going to work out, Ray. Yep. Chris Olave, loved Chris Olave 5 concussions ago. And, this tight end thing they got with Taysom Hill, who's sort of like a running back, wide receiver, tight end hybrid, and Johnson. And it seems like they got 7 guys on that depth chart every week. I just don't want to deal with it. They got this guy named Holker. I don't know if he's still on the team or not, or what's going on. So yeah, I'm out. Even though Johnson, I will give Johnson his credit. There's some weeks he looks amazing. I can't do it. I can't do it, right?
Well, just to reiterate, because we both brought up his name, and this question keeps coming up in the dynasty room over at fantasyguru.com. Chris Olave. And I think all of us routinely and roundly say, like this, the game of, am I getting a good deal while I'm adding Chris Olave? Well, if he doesn't have another concussion and you have him for the next 5 years catching 80 passes, you're getting a smoking deal. If in week 3 this year he gets hurt and he gets another concussion, his career could be over, like legitimately over. One final time, though it won't be the final time. One final time. What are your thoughts on Chris Olave this year and in a keeper scenario?
I'm not drafting him. With that said, the first part of what you mentioned, of course, we know Chris Olave is good. That is not the issue at all. But if there's a value play, it might be Rashid Shaheed. I'll take a shot on him or do something like that, or maybe take a shot on Kamara. But the rest of this offense, I just look at it and say, who's building this? Who thought this was fun? Right? Bringing in 30-year-old Brandon Cooks, who also has 5 concussions.
Right.
I don't know. It's just such a strange roster.
Russ Clay of FantasyGuru.com. Lots of time we spent this offseason talking about the Chargers revolving around Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton and how that's going to play out in the backfield. There were times last season where the Chargers under Roman and Harbaugh were extremely pass heavy. There were times where they weren't. So we have to decide, are they throwing it 600 times this year, or is it going to be 501? Then we have to decide who they're throwing it to. Last year, we said, look at this system. Let's go Hayden Hurst late and see, right? If he stays healthy, maybe we get a 60-catch season out of him. Didn't happen. Ty Conklin's now with the Chargers. Ty Conklin's basically catches 58 passes every year, or whatever it is, and he does his thing and gets out of there. He's with a team that has a need for a pass-catching tight end. Is it going to be the same from Ty Conklin this year? Is he someone that's on your radar at all?
They got Conklin and Will Dissly, my arch nemesis combo. of just what do we do? Like Seattle had Noah Fant. They brought in Noah Fant, and then they used Will Dissly as the starter the previous couple of years. Same thing with Conklin, where I'm like, why is Tyler Conklin starting? And then he's actually pretty good for a few years there. So, the other guy is they have the young kid, Oronde Gadsden, who, feeling old, son of the Miami Dolphins wide receiver, Oronde Gadsden. He's been looking good in training camp. So I think they're in flux there, but I do like Conklin if he can wrestle that starting spot away from Dissly. And then you have Herbert. Really the only high ceiling fantasy guy right now is Ladd McConkey. The rest is in flux. So you could probably get Conklin for free now. So that's an interesting play. And the Chargers, I like how they built their roster. They just don't want to be offensive with their game plan. So that's their problem.
Interestingly, and this is almost impossible to do, Conklin the last 4 years for multiple organizations, his catch total 61, 58, 61, 61. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And impossible, but he's done it. So good for him. So we know exactly what to expect. He's going to go 58 to 61 this year. Not quite how it works, but maybe. The final tight end to ask you about, and this is the guy, if we go back, 12 months, 10 months, we go back 10 months, 9.5 months. Isaiah Likely, baby. Isaiah Likely blows up in week 1. Isaiah Likely has a monstrous 9-catch, 111-yard touchdown effort in week 1. People in the fantasy industry legitimately were spending 100% of their fab budget to add Isaiah Likely. You see Russ laughing because this is true.
No, I just remember Jeff Mann shouting, calm down, everybody.
People were spending 90% of their budget on Isaiah Likely. People on the channel, SiriusXM, were saying spend 90% of your budget. People in the fantasy space were saying Andrews is washed. This is the season for Likely. And Likely was fine. But, of course, none of that played out as expected. And as Jeff Manns has said many times, anyone that told you to spend 90% of your budget should lose their job. But anyway, another topic. Where are we at with Isaiah Likely this year? There's been a lot of positive talk coming from his head coach. They got Mark Andrews, who in the second half scored a touchdown every game. They've got Mark Andrews, who has an undeniable connection with Lamar Jackson. But they do have Isaiah Likely, who is athletic, who does pose issues for defense. And it's not like the Ravens have, 9 banging wide receivers. More of the same for Likely, growth from Likely. Where are we at?
He is the backup to Mark Andrews. And that's what it's going to be. I actually think Mark Andrews is a nice value this year. He was banged up at the beginning of last year, and he had 11 touchdowns in 2024.
He scored a touchdown every game in the second half almost. It was every week.
And, he had that one bounce off his hands in the playoffs. He was inches away from being a playoff hero last year. So I agree that Andrews is getting older, but he's like 29, 30. So that's not too old for a tight end. Likely looks good. I think he's a good player. I think he's good for that offense and a very, very nice second tight end, and they're going to use him probably 50% of the snaps. The only problem for Ravens receivers is that some weeks the running game is working so well that they're up 35-3, and the whole second half is them fighting off a comeback, and they aren't throwing the ball. So when you're thinking about Likely for fantasy, it's just so hard to start him. It's a tough equation for when those points are coming, but good player, probably would be a full-time starter on a different team. But there's no way he's just pushing Mark Andrews to be a backup.
And let me ask this question. Almost all these guys, again, are outside. All of them are outside the top 10. Some of them are outside the top 15, according to ADP. I would, in a regular scenario, never, with a capital N, ever, 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 never draft a second tight end. It's a total waste of a roster spot. We have 10 roster spots. If we're in best ball, if we're in a keeper league, those are different scenarios. But a traditional setup where we've got 5 or 6 bench spots, no way am I taking a second tight end.
Yeah.
So likely to me, though, is the perfect second tight end, because if an injury happens to Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely's catching 75 passes, right? So he is, if you're going to do it, of all the names mentioned today, he's probably the one that excites me the most, because I feel like everyone else is kind of in that 50 to 65 catch, 5 touchdown zone. This is the one guy that could be something more, though I agree with you, on a weekly basis, he's not startable unless Andrews is down.
Yeah. So that's what we're looking at there. Good player. Would be good, and maybe he does get that opportunity someday in free agency.
Yeah, remember, his head coach keeps saying great things about him every 6 minutes. They got to do something to take the spotlight off of Tucker too. By the way, if you miss it, Tucker was suspended for 7 games. His career's probably over, it seems like, at this point, but we'll see.
It would, Ray. I mean, we see kickers go down every year, but the best kicker of an entire generation turned into just, he couldn't make anything. So it's a mental more than anything, right?
Yeah, it's rough situation with him. And obviously the Ravens moving on. Got a baseball question here, Russ, and it's with your main man, Corbin Carroll, your teammate there in Arizona. Kyle's asking a question, trying to work a trade for Corbin Carroll to make a late season push. How much are you willing to give up knowing he may miss a month? I think it's very difficult, and I can bring you in on this too, Russ, without asking you to break down home runs and steals. What are your thoughts on trading for a player? When you say he could miss a month, he could miss a month. It could be 6 weeks. I mean, you could have a setback. It could be 8 weeks. What's your thoughts in general? And then I'll specifically answer the question. Your thoughts in general of trading for a guy who's injured. People do that thinking, oh, if he can only get healthy, great value. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it's delayed, the comeback, and sometimes when the guy comes back, he's not the player he was before the injury.
Actually, I have one question for you before we head out. But in football, I almost never do this. I never drive down that lane. If someone's injured, I don't try to really pursue that too heavily. If they're on the waiver wire, maybe I'll pick them up. But trading for injured players has not been successful for me, so I stopped doing it. It can work out, of course. I remember a few years ago, Dalvin Cook had an ankle injury or a knee injury, and it sounded bad. He was out a few weeks, then he came back and he was a league winner. You know, sometimes that happens, but most of the time they come back and they're not the same. So, yeah.
And it's a wrist injury with him. And, you know, I know he's a pretty damn good power hitter, but he is 178 pounds or whatever. So you worry about the power when he returns. Looking at the list of players, I'd absolutely do Langford for him. I don't think that would work. Green, I definitely would not do Churio. Green, I probably wouldn't either. I don't, to be honest, Kyle. I mean, if you're going to do it with the names listed, it's Langford or bust for me. Hopefully Corbin Carroll will be back right after the All-Star break. Hopefully, we don't know that for certain. And remember, it was his hand, and then somehow it became his wrist, and he was going to be fine, and now he's on the injured list. Like, that whole scenario got me a little nervous with him. You got a question for me, Russ? What was the question?
What do you think of that kid from the Brewers?
Zurowski?
Oh my God. I watched him the other day. That was crazy.
The only guy in baseball that matches my body type, because he's 6'7", he weighs like 200 pounds.
But he throws like 100, doesn't he?
He throws 100. He threw multiple pitches at 100, 101. He even threw one at 102.4. And I've talked about him on the show a little bit here. Love it. It's great for baseball. He looks dynamic. He's allowed like 3 or 4 hits in 16 innings. He's been fantastic. He's throwing 100 miles an hour and his slider's at 95 miles an hour. There's no person who's ever lived who's done that as a starting pitcher ever. So I really worry about his arm flying off his body. And I jokingly said, enjoy it now, because, you know, it's going to, you can't throw, he throws a slider harder than like Nolan Ryan was throwing his fastball. Like, it's just insane. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And his issue coming up through the minors has been control. He hasn't had any issues with control at the big league level. And if you could throw darts with that stuff, batters aren't going to hit you. So we'll see if the return of the wildness, the command and control happens or not. Because if that happens, then you're a guy who throws hard, but batters can figure out a little bit when you make those mistakes. But yeah, it's amazing. I just can't. We pushed the body so far. Maybe he's the first guy to take this jump, to answer your question, Russ. But I have a problem betting on the first guy to do something, betting on greatness. You know what I mean? It's like no one's ever thrown 100 miles an hour with a 95 mile an hour slider as a starting pitcher anyone that's had remotely close to that level of stuff, they go to the bullpen and they throw 22 pitches. They don't throw 100 as a starting pitcher.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just saw it. I was like, I got to ask Bray about this, dude. This is insane.
It's amazing, right? Can you imagine trying to hit that? I can't. I've played baseball my whole life. I can't even imagine. Yeah, it's insanity. And then they show the overlays and like the ball halfway to home plate's in the same spot. And then one time it dives because it's the slider, and the other time I don't know how these guys. And you wonder why guys are hitting 240. That's why, because guys are throwing 100 miles an hour. Russell Clay at FantasyGuru.com joins every Friday. Comes in about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Russ, what you got coming down at the old website? I know you updated your Dynasty rankings recently. I saw you with a board behind you doing a video. What was all of that?
Yes, we did a full Superflex rookie draft review. I wanted to do that for the subs. I know a lot of them are asking about like rookie rankings and strategies. So I gave a full 20, 30 minutes on the 2025 rookie class, what type of quality I think it is and how I would draft. And also I did a pod with Armando Marsal yesterday, so go check that out. We talked about quarterbacks and super flex leagues and 2 quarterback leagues and all that good stuff. Yeah, we're plugging away on our draft guide. It's good stuff over there.
And remember, folks, you can see it on the screen there. The draft guide's available, including Russ's constantly updated Dynasty rankings. There's only a couple days left we have VIP Platinum, which gets everything we do, and it's the entire year, right? So it's 365 days. So you don't have to worry about when you sign up. It's a full year product. The VIP Platinum product. Click the subscribe tab in the top right corner. Everything we do, every sport we do, every article, every live stream, every podcast, any new products we add. If we add something for the Super Bowl or for the NCAA, you get it all if you sign up for the VIP Platinum. And remember, you've got a couple of days left here. We only do this twice a year, and Jeff was talking about it on the show yesterday on SiriusXM. Twice a year, we offer the VIP Platinum at half price. Right now, the month of June is half price. So you've got a couple of days left to get everything we do at half price for an entire year. So that's pretty exciting, Russ. And that would include them getting the football seasonal product that you're so involved with.
Love it. There we go, baby.
Great response, Russ. That was really good. Hey, there we go, baby. I was like, just win, baby. I thought you were going to be doing a Raiders thing there. Any big plans this weekend before we sign off here, Russ?
I do have a date. I'm going to Cheesecake Factory. I've never been before.
Oh, wow. Bring your appetite. They bring big plates.
I've heard it's big portions, big menus. So I got to do some research before I go on that.
It's always, you'll go on a date and you're talking to your partner and stuff, and it's like, you don't really have time to flip through 3 pages. Like, because you're trying to, so yeah, you might want to look a little early and pick out a few things that kind of sound good, because I think that menu is like 10 pages long. It's a huge menu. It's almost like a spiral binder or something.
Oh,
it's a big thing. Yeah. So do some preparation. I'm going to Bark and Brew, which is a Humane Society fundraiser. You pay like $150 for a ticket, and you get to drink beer for 2 hours.
Oh.
So it's like a bunch of vendors come, and they give you like 4-ounce glasses, and you drink, and you do like there's like 20 of them that you taste test. So that's what I'll be doing this weekend. So hopefully Russ and I have some good stories to share with everyone next week. Russ, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it. A lot of fun. Love the energy and all of that. And we'll do it again next Friday.
Thanks, Ray.
You got it. He's Russell Clay. I'm Ray Flowers. Enjoy your weekend, folks. Join us back here on Monday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com.